Welcome to Keen on Retirement, a show dedicated to helping you thrive before and during your retirement years. If you are looking to grow and protect your wealth and want to make the second half of your life the best half, then listen in as wealth advisor Bill Keen sorts through the key issues that you need to know in a lively and candid way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keen on Retirement. I am your co-host, Steve Sandusky, and I'm staring at two gentlemen, Bill Keen and Matt Wilson. Guys, we got another year in the books here. 2024 is in the rearview mirror. We're now staring at 2025. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm excited for it. Steve, it's hard to believe we're 25 years past the Y2K meltdown that was supposed to come and didn't happen. I guess the markets did kind of pull back then, but 25 years since then, that point, we've covered a lot of ground, not only in the last year, but in the last 25. So what's next now with AI and technology and all the advancements that we're seeing come down the pike? I think it's going to be super exciting. And we want to be on the right side of planning and intention about how we participate, don't we?
We absolutely do. And yeah, 25 years, that's hard to believe. And if you think about everything that has changed over the past 25 years, and you contemplate what could change over the next 25 years, a lot of people say that the pace of change is accelerating. So if you thought the past 25 years was a lot of change, then buckle your seatbelt because you ain't seen nothing yet. I think it's Bachman-Turner Overdrive. I think that was them who's saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, you think about that, like pace of change. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And I think of it like in the physical sense, like, are we not going to have cell phones? Because there's some other thing that's different now because it's changed so much. They've been around. The iPhone's been around since 2007, I believe. So it's like, that hasn't changed a whole lot, especially the iPhone.
We're going to have the new glasses. The new glasses that Zuckerberg rolled out last year.
And cars, that self-driving cars seems to get closer and closer to being a reality. I think there's few cities that actually have them that you can call like an Uber.
Yeah.
Well,
I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago. Hadn't been there in a long time. And lo and behold, what do I see? I'm on the street and all of a sudden here comes this car and there's nobody in it. Cruising along the road there in San Francisco. So obviously San Francisco is one of the early adopters of this driverless technology. But yeah, you raised a good point there, Matt, about what does the pace of change mean? And maybe one way to think about that is the pace of adoption of things, I think, has speeded up rapidly. So if you think about like televisions and how many decades it took before like 90% of the population had a TV in their house, or how quickly it moved from black and white TV to color TV, versus if you look at the iPhone, like how long did it take for people to have a smartphone in their pocket from when they first came out? Or look at AI, like ChatGPT. How long did it take before 100 million people were using ChatGPT on a daily basis? So I think the speed of adoption certainly seems to be moving much, much faster, and it makes it more difficult to keep up as well.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We always talk about what's going to be different, and something that we think about at Keen Wealth. I know when we're talking about strategic thinking about how we need to adapt our service model and what our clients and need, things that they know they need, and sometimes things they don't know they need. We do look at the speed of change and the rate of change and adoption, like you mentioned, but we also look at, I think almost intuitive, maybe counterintuitive to that, is what will be the same 10 years from now. We always want to talk about what's changing, but the question also is very important is what won't change? And I think that's important too. I mean, I think I was sitting with a CEO of a local engineering firm last Friday, very successful firm, ESOP firm, and we were just kind of collaborating, having a nice lunch here in the holiday season, and we were talking about this exact topic. And I asked him, well, what do you think won't change? And he was very quick, very sharp guy, came right back and said, well, relationships with our clients will certainly not change. They want to be able to call us and think through things and express their concerns and their successes and have somebody on the other end of the project have compassion and empathy and understanding and collaboration as humans collaborating. So I thought that was an interesting thing. I think that will be the same for our industry as well, like that human relationship. Hopefully that never changes. I don't know. Can you think of anything else that you think won't change?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Bill, because I remember a number of years ago, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, was being interviewed. And he said the exact same thing. Someone had asked him a question about change, and he flipped it just like you did, where he said, well, I think the more important question is, what's not going to change over the next decade? And in his case, he said, as it relates to Amazon, he said, there's three things that I don't think are going to change over the next 10 years. One is customers are always going to want low prices. Second is customers are always going to want vast selection. And third, customers are always going to want to get their stuff faster. And he said, we have essentially built our business around those three things: low prices, vast selection, speed of delivery. And we don't think those things are going to change over the next decade. And so we are happy and we are confident to invest in making those three things happen. And we don't worry about those things becoming obsolete. And we know that technology is going to enable us to deliver on those things better. And we know that technology is going to enable us to get scale and deliver on those things better. So, and I would say he's right. In this case, investing in those things. And it's like when they were investing in drones. Now, of course, drones have been all over the news with what's going on out in the Northeast. But they invested in drones, not because they just thought it was kind of cool, but they thought, well, this might be a way to get stuff delivered faster if we could just drop it right in somebody's front yard.
Well, that's a great response, Steve. You're very well studied on those topics. And I love what he said about those three things. It'd be hard to argue with those. The next step to that, I wonder, right, with AI and its predictive ability, are we just going to have drones drop things off at our house that we hadn't even ordered yet, that they've predicted we're going to want? You never know, right?
I hope not. And I mean, along those lines, though, you've seen on Amazon and probably some of the other e-commerce providers out there where it has the basically schedule it to be delivered every 30 days type kind of thing, rather than you have to go in and order it each month. Maybe some people like that. I personally don't, because even if I'm using something every month, let's say it's protein powder, for example. Well, I don't necessarily have protein powder every day, so I don't necessarily need it automatically shipped to me every 30 days. And so I don't want to use a service like that, because then I'm probably going to end up with multiple bags of stuff that I don't need because I'm not consuming it every day like they're assuming I am. Now, it's good for them because they know that, hey, we're just going to ship this stuff every month, whether he ordered it or not.
Right.
But I'm hoping I will still retain some level of autonomy and agency in the future, despite all this technology.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't want you
never
to
could
lose
have
your
imagined
free will,
the
Steve.
Yeah, for sure. We never could have imagined the technology we have today, and it's integrated in and we get comfortable with it. So whatever it is, I would assume we'll be comfortable with integrating that into our lives.
We're adaptable. In fact, I think that actually is a nice segue to what we want to talk about today. And since this is the beginning of the new year, and oftentimes this is a time for people to reflect on the previous year and also to look forward to the new year and maybe turn over a new leaf, maybe try something new, maybe set some resolutions and do whatever we can to make this new year our best year yet. And so let's talk about that. And I think we'll start off with resolutions. We won't spend a whole lot of time on that because I think we've talked about that in the past, and everyone's sort of familiar with the idea of resolutions. And we do want to share a few other ideas about the new year and how to make this year your best year yet. But let's just start with resolutions. Let me just ask, should we even have resolutions? Is that a relic of the past, or is there still some value to setting New Year's resolutions?
It seems like everyone should have a goal. we talked about this. I think it's been a few years, but the concept of ikigai, which was it's a Japanese word, and there's a book that was written about it around this area of Japan where these people live significantly longer than most everywhere else in the world. And part of it was because they had a sense of purpose. They always woke up every day with something that they were working on, which drove them to continue to thrive as they age. So having a goal can be important, but I think maybe sometimes the focus is too much on the goal, not about actually how do you accomplish the goal. Because it's one thing just to say something, it's another thing to actually accomplish it.
That's right. That's right. And then to be able to have some measurement around it and to feel like that you're making even progress. Sometimes the journey is the I don't want to say the journey's the goal, but we live it each and every day. So we set these goals out, which are yes, 100%. I mean, like this year, if we want to talk about a little bit about it, these aren't completely different from prior years for me. But as we talked a little bit in our last episode too. We talked about Warren Buffett and the Die with Zero book and how we enjoy our lives, we maximize, and we called I think we called dollars or money, we called it life energy units, or something along those lines, and making sure we're deploying those in a way that is fulfilling to us. But this year mine revolve around really being more aware of time with my family, time with my wife, time with my kids, who are grown mostly, and grandkids, and really being more aware of that instead of just letting it passively happen, being more proactive. As long as they're all on board for it, they might say, no, we're not. They're limiting their time. Like their resolution is less time with grandpa. No, but the time, and my physical health, the sleep, diet, exercise, and ways to measure those things that don't make it overly onerous to track, but things that we can create these small habits that are easy to maybe get in that rhythm to follow, but to have some measurement. You might recall that this time last year, I had a goal too, or a resolution, I guess you would call it, to be around the same weight at the first of every month. Do you remember that? You happen to remember that last year? And I had multiple listeners mention that to me, like, you're not going to be perfect dialed in every single day, but like keeping some consistency around where we are at maybe in my case, I decided the first of each month. So there's some little bit of flexibility in there. And the other thing is living in the moment for me. I kind of hit on that a moment ago, but just living in the moment, like not always. And we're planners by nature because that's our business here. We're helping people plan for the future. We talk about the best is yet to come in the second half of life, but life happens right now for us. We are living life at this moment, and that's really all we ever have is a series of these moments. So being more aware of these moments and figuring out a way to track those things and to just take a self-assessment. Am I living in the moment, or am I living it out into the future or back in the past to levels that aren't fulfilling or providing what I need for those things? So it's weird. It's as I get older, it's less about material things and more about those things that you can't really put a price tag on. So yeah, I think it's important. And I think they evolve and everybody's different. What about you, Steve? Do you think that they're important?
I think we should have things that we work toward that give us a reason to get up in the morning. And yes, they can be things like, I love my family, I want to spend time with my kids and my grandkids, and those are all wonderful things. But I think for most of us, though, we still need to feel like, even beyond that, that we've got a reason to get up in the morning, that we're feeling useful, that we're feeling like we're using whatever gifts that we may have. That could be volunteer work, it could be intellectual, it could be writing, it could be crafting, it could be woodworking. It's just something that makes me feel like I'm still a useful, productive person. And it doesn't have to be for money either. I'm definitely not talking about you got to get paid for something.
Sure.
And so I think a lot about that. And like for 2024, I had just a couple of goals I'll share here. One is, and I have this goal pretty much every year, which is to work out 80% or more of the days each year. Now, this year, I'm going to end up about 76% rather than 80. And I'm a pretty hard grader in the sense of, does this qualify as a workout day or not a workout day? So I had some of my sailing time, I did not count as workout days. And, a lot of people could argue that sailing is not exactly strenuous. So I didn't count those. But I definitely was active on a lot of those days. And then I got sick a couple times this year, which is, knock on wood, that's pretty unusual for me. But I think I missed probably close to 3 weeks of working out just from being sick. Nothing debilitating or anything.
Sure.
But just some nagging stuff that I wasn't able to work out. So that definitely knocked the numbers down. But what I also learned from that is that maybe it's just my body's way of saying to me, Steve, slow down, take it easy. You got to rest a little bit. Don't just crush this because you feel like you've got to hit some goal. So I'm always trying to strike that balance between, hey, I think this is good for me, but also I got to understand that my body needs to rest in between, and don't just try and work out because you feel like you got to hit some number if ultimately it's going to hurt your health. So, and then I had a second goal, which was related to sailing, which was to complete a particular certification, and I did complete that. So that was good. So nothing too heavy, but those were a couple of the specific measurable ones. And then I had a handful of others that were just more general about commitments that I make. And those are the kinds of things where I think of a commitment as something that is not specifically measurable quantitatively in terms of whether or not you've achieved it, but it's more of a feeling that either I feel like I achieved that or I didn't. And so I try not to kid myself. And as I mentioned, I'm a bit of a hard grader. So a commitment to me is something that I'm committed to doing. And I'm always checking in with myself. How am I doing on this commitment? Am I living up to that commitment? Have I fallen short? So it's just more of a personal reminder of personal things that I want to make sure that I'm more focused on and more committed to.
Very nice. Very nice. So that was last year. So
that was 2024.
Those that you mentioned, I remember sailing. Of course, I remember that. It's crazy. It seems like it was just yesterday that you shared that with us on this probably show of last year. So congrats on hitting those targets. Do you have anything you want to share this year for the upcoming? Do you want to hold back?
I don't have them finalized yet.
Okay.
But that'll be happening very soon. And so one of the things that I want to mention here, I'm not sure if we've talked about this on the previous podcasts in the past, but this idea of 3 words. And I know I've talked to this about you too. I think you guys have done this exercise in the past, but the simple idea is at the beginning of each year, you come up with 3 words that you want to symbolize or encapsulize what you're trying to keep top of mind for the coming year. And I've been doing this every year since 2015. So this will be my 9th or 10th year, I guess, of doing it. And just to kind of give you some examples of past words, in 2024, my 3 words were shed, embody, and structuring.
Okay.
Now, those probably don't mean much to anybody other than me. And you can read my blog post or when I talk about it in detail. Previous years, I've had words like wind, wayfind, and sense, as in SENSE. And that was 2023. And so that was really when I started to get into sailing. So those 3 words were more about sailing and trying to, more feel and experience the wind. And then wayfind was all about navigation. And then sense was just more of just trying to be more perceptive to everything around me and sensing things with all my different senses that each of us have. So again, I don't have the 3 words yet for this year, but it'll be coming up here extremely soon. But one of them that I'm pretty sure I'm going to have is the word bold, BOLD.
Oh, okay.
And and not bold in the sense of reckless, but just bold and, doing stuff that, might scare me a little bit. And, just to think different, do different things and see where it leads.
Very nice. Very nice. I remember one year you had a word that was, I believe it was like connection, maybe, or.
Yeah, connections was 2021.
2021. I was pretty sure it was. That's the year that you had Carissa. Carissa and I flew up and saw.
Oh yeah, yeah, we did one together. Yeah,
yeah, and we actually did a podcast from your studio there. But I thought when you said that, I told Carissa, I said we're a benefactor of Steve's connections word this year because we got an invite to the house. I don't know if it had to do with that objective initiative, but. I know we still have an invite to the house, though. So
you do.
Regardless,
that's right. Got to get you here to Portland.
Both ways,
Yeah.
Speaking of 2016, you mentioned, or 15, you've been doing your words.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the calendar the other day. We're actually in our 10th year, too, by the way, our 10th year of the podcast. I don't know if you realize that or not. So you could say it two ways. We've finished our 9th year. Or we're in the 10th year, but it's, we are in the 10th year because we started working on it in late 2015. And then I think we put out our first episode in January of 16. So we are in the 10th year of production, 230 or so episodes. And that been fun? Yeah, been good.
It's been amazing.
One of my resolutions back in 2015 was to start a podcast.
And it happened.
Yes, it did.
One other thing I want to talk about here is as it relates to resolutions or just how to think about the coming year is this idea of polarities. And this is not something that I've invented or anything, but I've really adapted it to the new year. And I think it's a great thing for retirees to think about. I think it's a great way to approach the coming year. And what I mean by that, a polarity is you've got two things that seem to be contradicting each other, but you really need to play both of those in some form of balance or balancing in a way that is going to enable you to be effective. And so let's just think about retirees as an example. So one of the things that retirees need to think about in retirement is this idea of structure versus spontaneity. So when you're working, your life is very structured. Most likely you're working 8 to 5, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, maybe the weekends, maybe at nights or what have you. So you've got a lot of structure to your day because work gives you that structure. And then if you retire and you go cold turkey, all of a sudden you wake up Monday morning, it's like, I don't have anywhere I have to be today.
Right.
And so it's easy to lose that structure and get lost. And so I think we have to think of this polarity in retirement between structure and spontaneity, meaning I probably still want to have some amount of structure in my life. It's not going to be work, but maybe I need to think about how am I going to use my days? Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are sort of workout exercise days. Maybe Tuesday, Thursdays are days to, connect with friends and family. And maybe Tuesday nights and Friday nights are going out to dinner nights or something like that. So still have some structure, but not be completely structured. So you've got room for spontaneity. And so I just love this idea of trying to embrace polarities, of trying to understand sort of the balancing between. And when I say balance, I don't mean 50-50. And I'm using ing specifically because it's not a static thing. It's sort of a movement. And so I really like the idea of polarities. And there's a whole lot of other ones too. Another one for a retiree might be purpose versus leisure. And of course, I think we all have to have purpose in our life. But we also want to just do fun stuff. It's like, I'm just doing this because it's fun, not because it's sort of some grand purpose in my life kind of thing. And so again, balancing doing things purposefully versus doing things just because it's fun and I'm enjoying it and we're hanging out at the lake on the boat and water skiing or what have you. So yeah, I just, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that we can think about too. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this idea of polarities.
Well, on that concept of, you're talking about in the context of retirees, and even having that, especially your last example about being, spontaneous a little bit. and just doing things just because you want to. I mean, we're trying to encourage our folks that aren't retired yet. You don't have to wait to retirement to do those things either. Enjoy the things that you have now when you can, because sometimes retirement is you keep pushing it off, thinking I'm going to do all these things, and then it just doesn't work out the way you thought, which then can create a whole host of issues too. So kind of what you mentioned, Bill, living in the moment at the same time of kind of preparing for the future. Part of what we talked about during our last podcast.
Just thinking that. Yeah, 100% just thinking that. And you think about a polarity, Steve, great topic. And, just our listeners and viewers here now on YouTube, as we post these on YouTube regularly, we asked Steve to lead us today in this show, this January 1st, January 2nd program here, because you have such a knowledge and wisdom around some of these topics, Steve. So thanks for kind of leading us, taking the lead on the show today with our outline that is naturally flowing here as we've done so many episodes together. But I was thinking of one of the, I guess you would call him, what would you call Tony Robbins? What's Tony Robbins actually called? Is he a motivational speaker? I don't know. He's an author. He's
something like that.
Some of his work I've followed over the years and attended a few of his things. And there's always, you take what speaks to you, and some you don't, and that. But I've benefited from his work and some of his thinking. And he had what he called the 6 human needs. It was kind of an offshoot of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it was kind of his version. And again, not saying it was super original, but the first human need that he laid out was called certainty. He said we all need certainty, and the need for safety, stability, comfort, order, control, consistency, the most basic need, a survival mechanism. But then very confusingly, and right next after that, is the need for uncertainty. I think, and Steve, you kind of mentioned this, but the need for
the polarity.
That's the polarity, yes. And it made me think of this. And so the need for unknown, the need for change, new stimuli, surprise, challenge, excitement, adventure. So what's interesting, and there's several others that he mentions here too. Significance is one, connection and love, growth and contribution. Now, these are just what he happened to lay out that I thought I'd go through there. Those first two are definitely very, very kind of polar, certainty and then uncertainty. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about his work when you think about it is when you're talking about two human beings that are living life together, it's interesting to see what order and what ranking the two humans appreciate those things. One person might have uncertainty, variety, challenge, stimuli, surprise, like super important, and the other partner might be the opposite. No. It's
so that's called chaos to them.
Yeah, it could be called chaos to them. And so even in human relationship, being aware of those things with your partner or your loved one is an interesting thing to do as well. But it was a great topic. On the topic of retirees, think about this one too, Matt. It's, we talk about, again, it all kind of ties back into our last show that we did, but how much work we do to help people think about, save money, invest money, be prudent stewards of their resources, enjoy their life on the journey. We always say it. Don't make it so strict that you don't enjoy it. You just abandon the process, like a too strict diet. But then we get out there into the later years where we've made the accumulation phase, and now we still want people to be prudent stewards of their resources, which is a way to say don't overspend so you run out of money. Someone said to me the other day, hey, that's a good way to say, be responsible, prudent steward of my resources. I'm going to write that down because she thought she was being cheap. And I said, no, you're not being cheap. We were buying a car here recently for Carissa and the sales lady was very nice. And she said, I'm cheap. I wouldn't get that extra warranty or whatever. And that was the sales lady telling us. And I said, no, you're not cheap. You're a prudent steward of your resources. Better semantics.
My dad would call that. My dad would say, "I'm not cheap. I'm just value conscious."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yet another set of semantics there for it.
Yeah.
But you get to a point where it's like, no. Everybody has their own journey around it. So I'm not saying there's any right or wrong. Although wrong could be running out of money before you run. You put yourself in a bad way. But we get to that point where prudent stewards, as we say, are value conscious. It's like, no, at some point we do want you to spend and enjoy. And, I say we want that. Of course, like each person do what they want to do, but to at least be aware of what's possible. So there's some polarity around that too. Saving and investing and then flipping over into this, and now it's time to spend. It's very difficult for people.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Tony Robbins there, and that reminded me of another idea to think about here as we approach the new year and for retirees. And that is this idea of scare yourself. And how that relates to Tony Robbins is there's a lot of people who would say, I would never go to a Tony Robbins event because he's Mr. Motivator. He's got you jumping up on the chairs and clapping and yelling and sharing your deepest, darkest secrets with the person sitting next to you. And it's like all this stuff that's going to make you highly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Fire walking. Oh, yeah. Forgot about the fire walking.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we
That's
were there
right,
with you, Steve, the year before we started this. We were at the event, Tony Robbins event with you in 2015.
Yep.
We sure were. Yeah, that was in Chicago, I think. Us and like 7,000 other people.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. And I think we had like 10 people there with us. But no, it was awesome.
It was. Yeah, we did walk the hot coals.
That's right.
So yes, we did. Now our listeners, we've done 230 episodes. Our listeners have, and our followers and viewers and all that have been on board. Now we start talking about walking on hot coals.
We'll be at our barbecue come this summer.
Okay. I think maybe we've officially jumped the shark.
Yes. We'll have to explain that. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should let people look it up, but
yeah. Well, I think that goes back to Happy Days, right? When Fonzie was, they were in Hawaii or something, and I think they literally jumped the shark or something on water skiing or something.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I may have that. Maybe it's a Partridge Family. It was one of those. But yeah, this idea of scare yourself. And when I say that, I don't mean in a reckless way. And, I've interviewed people in the past. One guy I interviewed had summited Mount Everest 16 times. Another guy.
Was that Rob?
No. This was Kenton Cool.
Okay.
And that's actually his real name. Cool. Kenton Cool. He's from England. And he's a mountain guide. Yeah. So it's his job. But, and I think now he's summited 17 times. One more time since I last talked to him. And then I've interviewed another guy, Navy test pilot, and he lands jets on aircraft carriers in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the night. It's like, that's a little scary. But again, this is their job. And so that's sort of what they do. But I think for the rest of us, I always like to think about, okay, what can I do this year that's going to get me out of the comfort zone? That, again, not reckless, but is something that pushes me to get out of my shell and expose me to something that I might not normally get exposed to in my day-to-day existence. And for me, for 20 years, it was climbing mountains. And most of that time I lived in the flatlands of the Midwest. And so going up to the mountains was like a very different environment. I always went with professional guides. So again, I'm not doing it in a reckless way. And, but it always, it scared me and got me out of the comfort zone. More recent times, it's about sailing. And again, I'm going with people who know what they're doing at this point, but it's getting me out on the ocean and, in storms and that sort of thing. And just trying to test myself. And I think what that does is, in many cases, it gives you additional confidence too. Because, hey, if I can do this, I can do this next thing. I can overcome this obstacle that's been thrown in my path here. And so I encourage people listening to think about what could you do in 2025 that would scare you a bit. Again, not in a reckless way, but just in a way that's going to challenge you to be at your best, that's going to challenge you to use each of your senses in a new way, that's going to challenge you to be in an environment that's not part of your normal environment. And just like a rubber band, when you stretch a rubber band, and you let it go again, it doesn't go back to its original size. It's a little bit bigger after you stretch it. And that's this whole idea of the comfort zone, is that if we get outside of our comfort zone and then we step back into the comfort zone, that comfort zone is just expanded a little bit. And I think that is going to enable us to really embrace the fullness and the richness that life has to offer if we can come out of our shell a little bit and test ourselves and scare ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, I heard a speaker kind of describe it this way, that everyone's potential is on the other side of their comfort zone. Yeah, interesting.
Love it.
What's on the list then for 2025, Steve? What's out of your comfort zone? You have it
yet? I have 3 more sailing trips already scheduled. And so that's going to be exciting. I think there's a decent chance I might do 1 or 2 more mountain climbing trips. So living here in the Portland area, I've got 2 mountains that I see very regularly. One is Mount Hood and the other is Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
And those are both volcanoes. And I had told myself a number of years ago that I'd love to climb like the top 5 to top 10 volcanoes here in the Pacific Northwest. And those are the 2 that are still hanging on my list. Okay. So there's a chance that 2025 might be the year for those 2. So we'll see. I'm not gonna commit to it yet, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting.
I love it. That is super exciting. You might recall back in 2020, I wanted to make a commitment to my physical health, and we actually had our trainers on the program, my physical trainer, and I committed to doing a kind of I guess it was a health effort, but it was a physical body transformation where I got myself down to a certain level of body fat and all that. And have done pretty good maintaining it, by the way, over the last 4 years. But I knew he was going to he has a huge following online, a huge network of people, and I knew he was going to follow my post the progress online. So it really held me accountable, and it was something that I felt like it's kind of funny. I learned a little bit about myself. Like I want to follow through if I make a commitment. Now I could have just told him halfway through, I guess, just stop posting stuff about me. People will forget about it, and no one will ever really know I didn't follow through. But that was a pretty cool thing that I had to look forward to, and was successful at it. And that rubber band didn't stretch back, like you mentioned. I've been able to maintain a commitment to health and fitness this entire time. Not to an extreme position, but something that's serving me. I remember when I learned how to fly, when I said I wanted to become a pilot. That was something that was 14 years ago now, but that was something that was way outside my comfort zone, way out, totally new language and new, abilities. So a couple examples there of that, but you've got me thinking now, Steve. One thing that I'll share is that, you, Steve, are one of the probably most, I respect most in the way you think about living your life. I've known you for many years. Clearly you document the ratios of your, when a guy knows 78% of the time he exercise and he missed it by his 80% goal by 2%. We know you're tracking things. We know you're on point. You're thinking about it. You're intentional. Pretty cool. Great example for our listeners and viewers here. I think it's awesome, but it's okay not to have your resolutions and some of these things thought through. And even though it's the 1st or 2nd here of January, Steve doesn't even yet. He's dialing his in for the first week here of the new year. So there you go. Some of these things I might have to find one that's I don't know if I'm going to find something as scary or equal or out of my comfort zone this year as learn how to fly or that, but I'll report back. Matt, you report back too. I mean, Matt races cars, and that's one thing I love about him too. He's pursued some of that, which is, Matt ran a 100-mile race at one point. It's been a number of years ago, but he trained and got himself down to a point where he ran 100 miles in one day. Started very early in the morning before the sun came up and was still running when the sun went down in 20 and a half hours. I hope I'm quoting that right.
Yep.
Did that, committed to that. He ran 100 miles. Like even some of the most elite athletes we come across they go, I did this and I did that, but oh my gosh, I have not done. You said it was a head game, a lot of it, Matt, but he also is one of the top race car drivers here in the Midwest and the regions that he operates in. So it's cool to see you guys and participate with you, and we kind of lift each other up as well with our various things that are different: sailing, flying, driving cars, running 100-mile races. Those are some might say we're extreme, but maybe we are to some extent. But
yeah, super impressive for both of you. I do want to add though that when we talk about scare yourself, it doesn't have to be a physical activity.
Sure.
Right? I mean, it could be, maybe you're like, hey, I've always wanted to be a writer. Okay. And that just scares you because you're just like, I don't want to put my words out into the public. Well, maybe this is the year that you start a blog, you start a Substack. Maybe this is the year that you write a book and you put it out there. So that could be an example of doing something that scares yourself. That's not a physical activity where you feel like, oh, maybe I'm putting myself in some danger. So, think expansively about what scare yourself means. Maybe it's putting yourself in certain social situations where in the past you felt uncomfortable. Maybe you feel a little shy or something. And maybe this is your year where I'm retired now and I need to go meet people. So I'm going to go join something. I'm going to go take a swing dancing class like Linda is trying to get me to do.
Well, Carissa too.
There's like a West Coast swing dance or something here that she wants me to start doing. So I may become a dancer in my later years here. So yeah, that could be something that you could scare yourself with, is to put yourself out there in something like that. So it's not just a physical thing that we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got, that calls to mind, it's really important to me, some of the philanthropic work that we do here at Keen, as we're trying to steward, so back into our communities, I suppose, with those less fortunate, and try to be hopefully maybe, and certainly the Keen team is a huge part of that. And I try to put myself around other people that have been more involved in philanthropy, learn from them. So I have several kind of social groups you just mentioned where I've been engaging with people that are farther down the road even than we are with that, with their thinking and how they evaluate things and how they process what's important to them and how they make those different impacts. Also from a spirit standpoint, I call it a healthy spirit. It's just a good general way to talk about it. But we all probably are on a sort of a spiritual path. And I've this last year and going into this year, I put myself around other. I'm in a men's group that I would say certainly is providing a lot of great guidance for me, and in places where I feel like that I might be the low man on the totem pole, even. Right. So what do they say, Steve? You're about hanging out with people that raise your standards. That's just how I say it. But isn't it the five people that you hang around with the most, or certainly your peer groups, right? Your peer groups will either raise your standards or lower your standards. I mean, we talk about that with our with our kids. I did that a lot as I grew up. You really got to be careful about kind of the folks you spend a lot of time with. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right?
That's right. Find a different room if you are.
If you're the smartest person in the room, find a different room. Yes. Well, it'd be much more comfortable to be the smartest in the room. I guess if you're self deciding that you're the smartest, whatever. But it's also very inspiring to be the least experienced or the least, to be the person that's learning the most in a group, which is kind of speaks to put yourself in situations that aren't physical necessarily, but that are going to raise you, going to lift your standards, going to raise your experience.
Yeah, and I'll mention one more thing here as we get ready to wrap up, and it was just reminded to me from what you just said there, Bill, about who you spend the most time with is who you tend to sort of become like or start thinking like. And another thing that I think about too, and I think the beginning of the year is a good time to do this, which is to diversify your input sources. And it's very easy for us to get into a rut. It's very easy for us to read the same kind of books, to watch the same kind of TV shows, to listen to the same people, listen to the same podcasts and that sort of thing. And it's not like we're necessarily learning anything new because we're just hearing the same things from the same kind of people. And so one of the things that I did here recently was I did an input cleanse. And so I looked around at what I was consuming, and I decided, okay, I want to mix things up here a little bit. And I'll give you one example, which is podcasts. So not only do I record a lot of podcasts, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so I looked at my phone and I looked at all the podcast shows that I subscribe to, and I went through and I literally deleted about half of them that I listened to. And now what I've been doing is I've been slowly replacing the half that I cut with other shows that I've never listened to before. And so I'm consciously trying to broaden my palette of what I'm listening to and trying to diversify my input sources. Not that I'm trying to change my mind about anything per se, but it's just like, hey, I'm a kind of guy who loves to learn. And so I want to expose myself to new things. And one of the things that I think that can help with is like with this show, for example, like as I learn and listen to new things, hopefully I can bring new perspectives to the conversations that we're having here on the podcast that can help each of the listeners. So to me, I think that's another good thing to think about 2025. Make it the year that you diversify your input sources.
I love it.
Was there one podcast in particular that was the easiest one to let go of? You just
you're probably not going to like this, but I deleted a few like financial advisor podcast shows.
Hopefully not Keen on Retirement.
No. I've been in this business for over 30 years now. And, 40, I hear a lot of the same people. Yeah. Well, not quite that many, but.
Okay. All right. Yeah. You were at Caterpillar before. Okay. Never.
Yeah. I was in corporate America before I got into this industry. But yeah, I definitely deleted a few of the financial advisor focused shows just because I've either known these people or heard these people for decades.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I want to hear some fresh voices here.
Good.
Any new ones that you would share? I mean,
well,
I talk.
Let me take
most surprising. That's
I'll take a look at my phone here. Let's
putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, I got a good one here. So, one of my favorite authors is Bill Bryson, and he's written a number of books. One of which is called A Short History of Nearly Everything. And he's an amazing writer. He's one of the few writers that has actually caused me to laugh out loud while I'm reading one of his books. And so there's this podcast, I don't think it's connected to him at all, but it's called Short History of, and then they do an episode on some particular topic and give you a short history of that. So for example, they've got short history of the Panama Canal, short history of Buckingham Palace. And then the particular one that caused me to listen to this one, I'm not sure if I can find it here because they got a lot of episodes, but it might have been a short history of celestial navigation or something like that.
Sure.
And then I saw, that's cool. And so then I subscribed to that podcast. And so, it's a short history of the Northwest Passage, a short history of the modern Olympics, a short history of Harry Houdini. So it's like, again, I love all that kind of stuff. And I find it fascinating. So so that's an example of a new podcast that I subscribe to.
Very cool. Very cool.
Great. All right, guys. Well, we should probably wrap this up here. Before a final comment here, I would encourage each of you listening to this, let us know what you're going to be doing different here in 2025. So send us an email, go to keenwealthadvisors.com and get back to us. Tell us if you've diversified your input sources, if you've listened to some new podcasts, if you set some resolutions for this year, if you've come up with 3 words for this year. We'd love to hear what you have on tap here for 2025, and perhaps we could share some of that on a future episode. So great, guys. Appreciate it. Another year in the hopper here and a new year to look forward to. So appreciate that. So any closing comments here?
Yeah, I appreciate our episode today, and Happy New Year to everyone out there. Happy New Year, 2025. We'll get back to here. Our next episodes coming up, or we're going to be deep into tax season and a lot of financial projections. And Matt recently had his 2025 outlook here a week and a half ago or so. You might just go back to our website and look if you didn't see that yet. They did a great job on that. We had some holiday greetings from our team and myself, and then Matt did his outlook, financial outlook, economic outlook for 2025. But our episodes, we like to keep them broad and various, and these last 2 that we've done have been more thought-provoking about how folks can enjoy their lives, enjoy their time, think through what they want their lives to look like, and design those lives and pursue those things, and not look back at the end and say, gosh, I wish I would have, but say, I'm glad I did, in whatever terms that suit you when you think about your lives. So, we'll get back to tax brackets. We'll get back to the markets. We'll have case studies. We'll have, can I retire with $2 million with these variables? And a lot of people love hearing us dig into those case studies, the listener questions that we get. We love those episodes as well, but we hope you've enjoyed these last several. We've been thinking a little bit bigger picture, a little more strategic, and we appreciate all of you followers that have been so loyal over so many years. It's just been great. We look forward to 2025, and once again, Happy New Year to everybody, and to you, Matt and Steve, as well.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Bill. And each of you listening, please visit us at keenwealthadvisors.com. And if you like the episode, please share the love with your friends and colleagues, and then also like this episode on your favorite podcast player. We'd appreciate that. So again, thank you for a great 2024, and we look forward to a wonderful 2025.
The Steve Sandusky Advisor Network and Belay Advisor are not affiliated with Keen Wealth Advisors. Opinions expressed by Steve are his own and not necessarily the opinions of Keen Wealth Advisors. Keen Wealth Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Keen Wealth Advisors and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. The contents of this podcast are intended for the residents of the United States of America. No advice may be rendered by Keen Wealth Advisors unless a client service agreement is in place. This program is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice on or a recommendation of any particular investment, strategy, or as tax or legal advice for your specific situation. Keen Wealth Advisors is not a tax or legal advisor. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your licensed professional prior to investing. Information in this program was compiled from sources believed to be reliable. Due to the constant state of data changing, we do not guarantee the timeliness or the accuracy of the information provided. Our views or opinions at the time you are listening to the podcast may be different than they were when the podcast was recorded. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any prices that are referenced or market forecasts are as of the date stated and are not necessarily our opinions moving forward. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. This podcast is not allowed to be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced without permission from Keen Wealth Advisors.